The Torah tells us that every year on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the communal offerings that were brought twice a day. There was a communal offering brought early in the morning, and the closing sacrifice of the day was the afternoon communal offering. They were called Tomid. The word Tomid means on a continuous basis, day in and day out. You would bring two communal offerings, one at the start of the day, one at the closing of the day. These offerings were purchased from communal funds. Every male Jew above the age of 20 had to give a half a silver coin to send it to the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan, and from these half coins, silver coins, they would purchase the communal offerings. Every year, Nisan, new coins had to be sent, although post facto, if you buy the communal offerings from the old coins that were sent before Nisan is valid, but there's a mitzvah that the purchases of the communal offerings going forward should be from the new silver coins, new half machzeh shekel. However, initially, over here, when they counted the Jews above the age of 20, the males, how did they count them? Each person would send the half a silver coin, and through the counting of the coins, they would know how many Jews there were above the age of 20. When you acknowledge the heads of the Bnei Yisrael according to their numbers. Each person would give an atonement for his soul to God, bifkorosam, where they would be counted. When you would be counted, the coin that was used, that would be used to bring an atonement before Hashem. So there should not be a plague when they will be counted. So we're saying two things. The value of the coin was to purchase the communal offerings. However, when they're being counted, since they're being individualized, they're subject to plague. So this would avert the plague because it's an atonement for their souls. That's what the Torah is saying. What exactly is going on over here? So over here, the Sefarno explains, the Gemara tells us in Baruchos that if a person prays and he feels that he prayed so well, the Amidah, the Shmon Esrei, he's worthy that God should answer him. This activates prosecution on the person. Why does it activate prosecution? Because if a person feels that he's out of the ordinary, he's special, and therefore he should be acknowledged specially, they say, by the way, who is this person? Once they ask the question, who is this person, this causes an audit of one's record. No one's record is perfect. Shlomo says in Koheles, there's no perfect tzaddik. However, because there's Midas HaRachmim doesn't allow the Satan, who's the prosecutor of Jewish people, to prosecute the record. But there are times where it could actually activate prosecution if they take notice of the person. When do they take notice of the person? In such a situation here, a person goes and he feels, I'm King Tut, I'm king of the hilt. They say, this king of the hilt, why is he so special? And the moment he wants that attention and that focus, they should focus on him, that immediately causes an audit. That's the reason. Another situation is, under normal circumstances, we all merit Midas HaRachmim, attribute of mercy, because without it, the world couldn't survive. What about a person doesn't value his life? The Gemara talks about a person walks by a wall. There's a wall that is very shaky, and the person, by walking by this wall, he's putting his life at risk, putting his life in danger, because as he walks by that wall, the wall could fall over and he could forfeit his life. So The only reason why a person lives, only because of Midas HaRachmin. Because if Hashem would allow a person's record to be audited, nobody would survive, or it's very questionable. There'd be very serious consequences as a result of that prosecution. If this man goes and he doesn't value his life, and he puts his life in jeopardy, they say, you know something, we're here, Hashem is going out of his way not to allow the prosecution to take place because he values his life. He wants the person to live, and the man himself doesn't value his own life. So if he doesn't value his own life, Hashem allows the prosecutor to prosecute. Okay? Individualizing a person. If a person goes and he remains anonymous, I'm part of the group. I don't want to be identified. I'm part of the tzibur. But the moment you start individualizing a person, and this is the reason why Jews don't count people. We don't count ourselves. Because when you count a person, even if you don't count them by name, you count them by number, he's being individualized. The moment you individualize a person, you're opening an issue of being prosecuted. Because until now, we just blend in to the fabric of Klal Yisrael. The moment we are identified as individualized, who is he? As a result of that, there could be prosecution because our record is not perfect. So that half a silver coin is given l'chaper al nafshosam, to atone for, it's used for the communal offering, which karbonos, the whole concept of karbonos is midas harachmim. So that counters the prosecution, which is activated due to the individualization of the individual. So that's what the Torah tells us over here. You have to give the machzeh shekel because Jews have to be counted. V'nosel ish kofen navsho l'Hashem. When you're giving that half a coin, it's an atonement for your soul, for Hashem. L'Hashem is what? Midas harachmim, bifkoros, when they're being counted. And as a result of that, the luya ben negef. And therefore, there will not be a plague when they are counted, because the utilization of that coin for kapara will counter the prosecution, because that will address the failing which is on one's record. Right? That's the simple understanding of what the Torah tells us. We find that David HaMelech, and the Ramban at length speaks about this at the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar, he counted the Jews. And because he counted the Jews, there was a plague. So the Ramban over there asks, David HaMelech didn't know what every school child knows. The Jews are not supposed to be counted. That's his question. So he goes and explains, he gives two answers. He says, either he counted them. First, he brings Chazal, that you're only permitted to count if only at that particular moment you have to know the numbers, like our situation. What was the value of knowing the numbers of Jews? Initially, we had to know the numbers because we were going into Eretz Yisrael. This is pre-Chet to Egel, before the sin of the Egel. So we always have to know, and firstly, it's only people, males above the age of 20. The Jewish people always had a standing army. And you're only eligible for conscription from the age of 20 and above, only the males. So to know how many able men you have who are qualified for the army, you have to be counted. And of course, we're going into Canaan to wage war against the Canaanim, for the conquest. So that's a counting which has to be known, a necessary counting. But just like you want to count, but just to know how many people you have. Like the Ramban says, David wanted to know just how many of his subjects are above the age of 20. It was not for the sake of going to war. That counting is not justified. So even though whatever you use those coins for, since it's an unjustified counting, that actually engenders plague. And therefore there was a plague. That's one approach the Ramban says based on Chazal. The other approach, he says, what about if you want to count all males who are of obligation from bar mitzvah and above, not from the age of 20 and above? Because you want to know how many subjects you have. That's a problem. Because the Torah says counting is only from the age of 20 and above. Since he wanted to know the number of how many subjects he had, that engendered plague. Because it's only from the age of 20 and above, regardless of what you use those coins for, it doesn't make a difference. Therefore, these are the two approaches of Ramban, why there was plague. So I'd explain then the Ramban, when you count for war, because there's a concept known as Ein Somchen Ala Nes. I mean, the conquest of Canaan was supposed to be miraculous. And it was, look, the way they conquered Yericho. The way they conquered, there weren't supposed to be casualties. But nevertheless, what's the concept of Ein Somchen Ala Nes? We don't rely on miracles. We as human beings, as Jews, we have to do whatever we can with, and take every initiative up to a point, what's within our ability. Beyond that point, Hashem takes over. That's the concept of Ein Somchen Ala Nes. So therefore, what about if you're not, there's no reason to take initiative at this moment. Or the people you're taking into account are not qualified to be conscripted. It's just for you to know. So why are you counting them? So now this is the concept. We read in the Tochacha that if you follow the way of a God, it says, Yirdof echod elef. One Jew will pursue 1,000 of the enemy. How's it possible? One Jew should pursue 1,000 of the enemy. The numbers are impossible numbers. The odds, 1 against 1,000. The answer is Hashem says, one Jew will pursue 1,000 of the enemy and defeat them. The answer is, if Hashem is your backer, is backing you, the whole concept of number has no relevance because we're dealing at a whole different level. What about one of the enemy will pursue with 10,000 Jews, not 1,000. One will pursue 10,000. Meaning, if you believe that everything is based on number, if the material has value, and that's the reason why you're not following my statutes, and you're violating my will, and you're pursuing the material, then I will show you the material has no value. That the finite has no value. So that's the understanding. What is the value of Klal Yisrael? The value of Klal Yisrael, whether you have 1,000 Jews, 10,000 Jews, 10 million Jews, our value is the same value. Our innate values were with the Yam Hashem. We're God's people. That is our value. So to know the numbers, if it's not within the context of Ein Somchen Ala Nes, what do you count? What's the value of counting? Unless there's a reason to count, a Jew should not be counted. So that David counted, it wasn't the time of going to war, or he wanted to know the number below the age of 20, which anybody below the age of 20 has no relevance to conscription. Why are you counting them? Well, I want to know how many people I reign over. But it's irrelevant, because the value of Klal Yisrael is not the number, it's who we are, and who we are is the Yam Hashem. Therefore, as was to prove the point, that number means nothing, what does it engender? It engenders plague. And once there's plague says the numbers mean nothing, because all of a sudden the numbers are diminished due to the plague. Because again, but you still have to go back, as much as David may have failed, but why should the Jews be the culprits here? Be the consequences, be the victims? The answer is because our records are not perfect. No Jew has a perfect record. And because all our records are imperfect, and the only reason why we're able to survive regardless of that is because Midas HaRachmin, but the moment we're individualized and we're identified as individuals, then Satan takes notice, we're not part of the tzibur any longer. As a result of that, therefore there's prosecution. Therefore, by David, this is the reason why there was plague as a result of the counting.